All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dapper community call for October 5th, 2021. My name is Nick Greenfield, and I'm an approver for the Dapper docs repo, and I'll be the host for today's call. We have an exciting agenda for tonight, so we're going to get right into the content to make sure we have enough time to get through everything. So to get started, we're going to review the most recent hotfixes 141 and 142. What went into those hot fixes and why those changes were necessary. After that, we're going to take a close look at an open proposal that's actually live on GitHub right now for the state store query API. And I believe we'll see a demo of that. Next, we'll dive into the component integration test infrastructure and framework, specifically looking at the Kafka component. And then lastly, we'll wrap things up with an update on the CNCF application, as well as an overview of the new Dapr steering and technical committee. And if there's time, we'll hold the open discussion as always. If there's any comments as we go through this, feel free to leave them in the chat and we'll save time at the end to review those. Oh, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. I'm going to switch to my browser here. So you'll notice the first housekeeping item revolves around these community calls themselves. We want to broaden our inclusion and engagement of the Dapper community. And so we really want to hear topics from the community to be covered during these calls and potentially for the community to do some presentations as well. And so to help facilitate those discussions of potential topics, we've created these 3 GitHub issues that you'll see pinned at the top of, lost my mouse. You'll see it pinned at the top of the Dapper community repo. So these are for the next 3 community meetings. So November 2nd, since 2 weeks from now will be DapperCon, which we'll talk about briefly, but 2 weeks after that is the 2nd. And so we can use these discussions here, this thread, to, if there's topics that you want to hear more about or potentially do a show and tell of how you're using Dapper in a cool way, you can, provide a suggestion here. And then, 3 days prior to the community call, a community host will finalize that agenda. And so, yeah, we can have more engagement with the Dapper community. And so the other housekeeping item is around DapperCon. So I'll let Ori take over the screen and talk to that.
Thank you. Let me share. Okay, so today we actually announced some more. Can you see my screen? Just checking.
Yes, we can.
Great. So today we posted a blog about DapperCon. It's happening exactly 2 weeks from now on October 19th. Very exciting. I hope this is not the first you've heard of us doing a DapperCon. It's going to be the first ever Dapper community event. And this, I'm showing here the blog post that we kind of put with all the details on how to stream it. It's completely free. There are no registration walls or anything that was important to us. So anybody can go and watch it. It's going to be streamed on YouTube. Here you're going to see the agenda, details on all the sessions. And on day 2, we're actually going to have some workshops. And one really important thing to know is that if you intend to take part in those workshops, and I really recommend you do, there's a few prerequisites that we want to make sure all attendees make sure they have in their environment, so we don't waste any time. So all the details are here, so check it out. I just want to again emphasize this is all going to be on YouTube. Once we stream it, basically you can click here and that will take you to the live event is already scheduled. You see I kind of put a reminder on for myself, so you can do that as well. If you go to just the YouTube channel, by the way, you'll see in the upcoming live streams those 2 live stream events for each day. So that's going to be October 19th and October 20th, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We really want to see you there. And just in case you want another reminder, in the docs, we also kind of added on the front page like a nice little reminder and link that takes you to that blog post. So yeah, DapperCon, very excited. We got a lot of speakers, we got panels, we got technical sessions, we got real use cases of Dapper in production. Really awesome stuff. So hoping to see you all there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so I think with that, we can get into the first agenda item, which is the two recent hotfixes, 141 and 142. So I'll let Artur take it away.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we have two hotfixes for 1.4. The first one was about the sidecar injector not being injected for one situation, especially when you're doing like the kubectl debug, and there was some changes in the account that you are using to connect. So in this case, you would get admission webhook rejection and denial, and that would not create the session for you. And the other one is about the pub sub routing, which is a preview feature that was introduced in 1.4. But if you have expressions that refer to the event a variable twice in the same expression, there will be a bug where it will cause an error and not not resolve the expression. So that was fixed as well in the 1.4.1. On the other hand, there were other scenarios that would still cause the admission webhook to return denial, and that was when someone was using the Tecton pipeline controller. It was not necessarily because of open function. It was more about the again how the controller account were being used, and then the 1.4.2 fixed that. We identified that there was a change, an unintentional change in the logic on the admission webhook logic for the sidecar injector, and it was fixed as part of 1.4.2. So that is the recommended way to the recommended version to install. Not everyone might see this issue. If you have, let's say, AKS and you use the admin account to use, let's say, the debug session, it works out of the box. So it is situations where a different account is being used. So that was the two hotfixes. So please use those versions instead. And that's it for me. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you. Doesn't look like there's any comments regarding the hotfixes, so I think we can move into the next topic, which I believe is the state store query API. And Dimitri is going to run us through that proposal and show off a demo.
Okay, thank you. Sharing my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, so so this work has a long history. So the original request for this feature has been submitted in March 2020, and it took us some time to get to it. So the this work is to allow users to use generic API to query state stores, and underneath we will in a Dapr runtime we will have some engine that processes the query and passes it over to component, and that component in turn will actually run the query in the native database API. So the I don't have any slides, but all the information is in the GitHub in this issue. So what I propose is to construct a query that has three parts: filter, sort, and pagination. And filter is implementation of tree, where each node is the operand. As of now, we support 4 types of operands: the equal, in, and or. But it's very easy to extend to any type of operation in the future. Sort is obviously to sort the result, and pagination is, as the name suggests, is pagination. So I'd like to show how this query looks like. So it's a JSON object, and the query itself has filters, sort and page parts. Where sorting, we have key and order. We support the ascending and descending order of sorting. And pagination, we have a limit, so how many items per page or per result. And token is implementation specific token for the next page, and it will be returned by a component and fed in as is to the next query. So here is an example of how query might look like. Like I said, it's a JSON object, and the filter is a tree. So in this case, the root element is OR, and it has two childs, could be more. And the first child is single element equal. So person.org is in equals DevOps. And second element is another combined node and it has 2 elements, again, could be more. And in this case, we have person.org finance, and state is in California, Washington. And we want to sort the results. The primary key is state and descent order, and secondary key is person name, and by default order is ascending. And we want 10 results per page. So when we specify pagination, first query will have no token, because token is something that a component returns. But if we want to run this query second time, so we need to add the content of the token returned by the first query. So if this query, if we translate this query into SQL, it will look like that. So select everything from a container where person.org equals a DevOps, or org is in person.org is finance, and state in California and Washington, and order by state descending and person name ascending, limit 10. So that's pretty straightforward translation. So what we submit to the what we submit to Dapr runtime is a query request that contains my bad. So when we get results from Dapr runtime, we have array of results, and each result will have a key, data, and e tag. And if something went wrong for this result, then we will have error string indicating what kind of error was. So that's a response from Dapr runtime. The input is this query. Like I said, this query is the input for the query. So the Dapr runtime will implement the query engine that has the filter interface, and like I said, we support 4 different operands. And the Dapr runtime will actually create a native query. But since each query is component dependent, the developer of the component will have to implement a visitor interface meaning that for each type of operation, the developer will have to implement a function that returns that substring of the query. So, for example, if we go to a SQL example, right? So the equal operator will return this substring person.org equals DevOps, and the OR operator will return concatenation of whatever is on one side, and then OR, keyword OR, and then whatever is on the left side. And same with similar logic for AND and IN. So once this visitor interface is implemented, then Dapr runtime will use build query function that does all the work underneath and returns actual query. So if you can see how the query function could look like in a component is pretty straightforward. So we the query is a component specific object that implements visitor interface. We pass it to query builder. It returns so query builder returns an object, and we execute the query and generate the result and send the result back. So this is the proposed design. I actually went ahead and implemented. Sorry, I need to move that. Yeah, I created a pull request for the implementation in Dapr and Dapr components contrib. I also implemented a visitor interface for two components, MongoDB and Cosmos DB. I don't think I should go through the code, but this is the PR in component contrib 1153, and you are welcome to review and comment and try it. But for now, I'd like to demo how it works. I also have another PR in Dapr. So this is I have my own implementation of my own build of Dapr that includes these changes in component contrib. So that's why you can currently see that I'm asking not to merge it, because this PR has dependency on PR and component contrib. So let's go with the demo. So for starters, I created, I have two instances of, one is MongoDB. So you can see I created 10 entries. I created 10 entries of objects which has a person name and org and code, and also city and state. So it's a nested JSON object. And I created identical data in Cosmos DB. As you can see here, I have, again, 10 objects, and they have exactly identical data. It's a person, which has a name, org, and code, and state and city. So I think okay, let's see So how the query looks like. So the first query that I have is pretty straight, pretty simple. So I don't have filter, I don't have sort, I only have pagination, meaning that I want to query everything and I want to have 5 results per page. Okay, so let me run this command first in MongoDB. So this is the command line. So I have Dapr. My MongoDB is a configuration. The component config is here, and I'm running my binary that I built against this query. As you can see, same query that we just saw. Okay. So what we see is I have 5 results, and the ID is the key is the ID, and I for simplicity I assigned IDs 1 to 10. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 results.
Dmitry, can you make your font a little bigger, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it good enough?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so we have 5 result key 1 to 5, and I will run same command. I'll run same command in Cosmos DB. So it will be same command line, and let me okay. So you can see it's I also got 5 commands. So, and you can see the difference. The tokens are different. We have distinct tokens. In case of MongoDB, it just says the ID or the ID of the next next element. And for Cosmos DB, it's more complicated. So let's run. I have already created query for MongoDB. So you can see it's the same query. All I did is I added token, right? So, and if I run this query, I'm getting items from ID 6 to ID 10. So exactly what I expected. So now let's do, let's try live demo. So vi test query token Cosmos. So here I don't have token. So let me add it. Right, as is. And now I want to run this query token Cosmos. And okay. And you can see I got results 6 to 10. So exactly same logic as for MongoDB, same query. The only difference is that I need to provide component-specific token. So let's look at another example.
Just a quick time check to make sure you got a couple minutes left.
Yeah. I don't need more. Test query, query 2. So this query has filter, and I want results from the state of California only. So what I do is, if I run it MongoDB, I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4 entries. They all state of California, right? And if I run the same query in Cosmos DB, same. I have 4 results from state of California. Last example, I just want to show you like more complicated. So here I have filter, a complicated filter, and I sort results by state in a descending order, and then person name in ascending order. So let's see how it works. Yeah, so I've got several results, and if we look at the results, so first is we are sorting by state in descending order. So it's Washington first goes, and then it goes New York and California. And within, if we look at the within states, the results sorted by person name. So here is Mike and Nick, which is correct. And state of Washington, we have John, Leo, and Peter, so also correct. So that's basically my demo. Feel free to comment on both the proposal and the PR, and thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Dimitri. And yeah, as Dimitri said, the links, if you put those in the chat, Dimitri, that'd be great for the proposal. There's an interesting discussion going on right now, so stay tuned for that. Up next, we have the component integration test, specifically looking at Kafka, and let Tanvi take that away. I think she has some slides she would like to show.
Thanks, Nick. So let me share my screen. All right. Hi, I'm Tanvi Gaur. I've been working with Phil Keddy on the component integration testing infrastructure for general infrastructure, but today we'll be demoing especially for Kafka scenario. So let's get into the agenda for today. First of all, we'll be looking at what is the integration test infrastructure and what was the need to have it. We'll be going through the test scenario with Kafka example. We'll be going through a demo for it. And in the end, we'll just go through a basic test flow diagram as well to understand how the test flow in general looks like, whether Kafka or without it. So let's start with what integration test infrastructure is. So it's nothing too major, but it's a simple utility that we have with some helper functions that you can use to build the infrastructure in order to write the integration tests for the components. The reason to have this was we already have a bunch of conformance tests for our components, but this infrastructure was needed to build a bridge between the existing tests and what was expected from the scenarios that were necessary to have a better quality testing for our components. So, for example, there were a bunch of things that our existing tests do not address, and we wanted to address those things with our current infrastructure. For example, for resiliency and reconnection, right? We did not have a way to test that. For example, for provisioning and deprovisioning, for instance, how to know when to stop versus tear down the service. Similarly, for data integrity check, basically knowing the data persistence, if it is persistence across different schemas and different data types or not, is also an important part that was missing in the previous tests. And similarly, testing for different configurations or multiple properties. So let's dive into an example scenario that we have using our current integration test infrastructure that we are working on right now using Kafka. So just to make this diagram make more sense to the users, we have this color-coded stuff going on here. So light blue boxes basically are the ones that are the pieces that the test writer has to write. And the orange boxes that you see are basically the utilities that we provide in the infrastructure. So for this particular case for Kafka, this is the test app. We have a test publisher that the test writer would be writing. In this case, we are expecting certain messages. We're sending some messages, and the same thing on the test subscriber side, where the test writer has to write that as well. We have the watcher concept in our utility, which basically would be observing these messages and validating and helping validate for them to be in the right order or not. And on the right side, as you can see, this Docker Compose is bringing up the Kafka brokers and starting them. So it's a very simple infrastructure. One more thing to notice is this piece where we are basically simulating processing errors using our utility for this particular example, and we'll be going through it while demoing. We are simulating errors every 100 messages. So how does this flow basically look like? Just in terms of how each piece goes into in this integration test infrastructure, right? So first of all, the infrastructure which is in this case is the Kafka service, which is up. Then the app starts, the Dapr starts as well. The piece here which you're testing is whatever workflow you're testing. In the Kafka scenario, that's the sending and tracking messages that we are testing. And then we go in the reverse order for the same thing. So we keep stopping each and every application one by one, bring down the Kafka brokers, and that's it. That's the end of, that's a cleanup phase, and that completes the flow state for our test. So let me, before we dive into the demo, probably it makes more sense to, and I missed that, just go through the test plan that Phil created actually. So Phil created a test plan for, let me open that. Yeah. So Phil today created the test plan to certify Apache Kafka as the GA in PubSub. And you can see there are multiple scenarios that sort of form a criteria to GA Kafka and in PubSub. So we'll be going through one of the scenarios is what we're going through here, which is this one that we just discussed. And then there is a Kafka infra test where you can start a constant flow of publishing and subscribing. You can start second sidecar application using the same consumer group. Stop one broker so that there's just 2 out of 3 that are active. Then you stop another one, and then you restart all of them so that there are 3 of 3 are active, and that start multiple consumers with different consumer groups. So that's one of the important scenarios as well. And another one that we spoke about at the start when we were talking about what are the things that we are trying to address was the data integrity test piece. So for instance, for cloud events, you can just publish cloud events, and then the app verifies the binary encoding. Kafka messages are received by app, and then the binary encoding is what would verify the persistence of the data. And the same thing with the raw events as well. You can publish these various raw events, and then same thing with binary encoding, the integrity is tested. So just wanted to run you guys through this. Feel free to comment on this issue. Okay, so let's now go through the demo for our test. So just don't want to dig too much into the actual test, but just want to show you the major things that we saw through the diagram, right? And one of those was the watcher that we were looking at.
Hey, Tanvi,
Yeah.
I think you're still showing your browser. You need to share the VS Code.
Oh, is it? Okay, thank you. Thank you for. Okay, can you guys see my visual code now?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. All right, so yeah, so this is how the test looks like that we looked into in the slides. Basically, this is the watcher piece that is observing the messages. This is the ordered function of it. Because this is Kafka, we want to make sure that's all ordered. And then this is the piece where the publisher is being written. And so you can see all the messages being, so these are the messages with increasing numbers appended to them. And that's all. This is the expected strings. And then we just assert these messages to be in order, basically. So that is, and this is the subscriber piece. The one important piece to look at this is this one where we are simulating the errors after every 100 messages. And the rest is pretty much intuitive. This is the observe piece that is observing the data. And this is another thing that we have, which is the flow. It's more or less like a step-by-step task runner. We have the concept of steps here, which basically has some mandatory parameters, and then there's a cleanup state as well that runnable that you can add to it, which is optional. Just want to show you that one thing quickly. Yeah, this is how it looks like. All right, back to our test. And that's all. And then we run the app, the sidecar, and then we just send in wait, send the messages and wait. And now let's look at our test run. There you go. So it ran pretty quickly. As you can see, every 100 messages, you can see the error simulation as well happening. And these are all the numbers you can see in incrementing. Yeah, so that's pretty much it that I have for today's demo.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tony, for that overview. Let's see, anything in the chat? Just some clapping emojis. So yeah, thanks for that overview of the testing framework and the example looking into Kafka. Okay, so let me make sure we get through everything. I will share my screen and move on to the last topic, which is the CNCF update, as well as the new Dapr steering and technical committee that Mark and Yaron will speak to.
Right, yeah, thanks, Nick. So I thought the last update we gave on the state of the CNCF was about a couple of months ago. And since then, there's been some change and movement. Most notably, Dapr was submitted into the app delivery group, and the app delivery group recommendation was that Dapr should be taken forward as a incubation project inside CNCF. So that was a huge endorsement of Dapr. As part of that, we had to write what was called a due diligence document. And so if you go to the CNCF list here, you can see that URL, and if you kind of search for that, if you search for CNCF TOC lists and go to that URL, you'll see that what's happened now is it's now go to a stage where the app delivery requests that there's open public comment period. So now's the time for you to kind of go and read that due diligence document that we wrote. It describes all of the criteria to become an incubations project inside CNCF, which is fairly, it's fairly comprehensive. Let's put it that way. They require you to make sure that you've got good engineering practices, good governance practices, good open source practices, good community engagement practices like this, as well, of course, as they actually interviewed 3 customers who were running in production and using Dapr in production to get their feedback directly. And that was all taken into account as part of the recommendation. So it's a great endorsement to have Dapr go to its public comment period. Feel free to read that document and put your own comments inside it. And really the next step after this is after that 2-week period, the technical oversight committee, which makes the technical recommendations for CNCF itself, those members actually vote on it. And if they vote and they vote a supermajority to accept Dapr as an incubation project, then at that point it officially gets accepted, and we start to make sure that Dapr gets transferred fully into CNC ownership, which includes everything that they take ownership of, including the project effectively and the icons and all that sort of thing. But and at that point, of course, it's fully within inside the CNCF hands and control, and they can decide the have a discussion point about the future direction of the project. But so we're pretty excited by this. I encourage you to go and just look at the due diligence document, and we'll hopefully give another update, which will be a positive update in the next couple of maybe in a few weeks, maybe in probably more like a couple of months time when we'll come back to this.
Yeah, Mark, and I'll just add to that something pretty important to also note that the CNCF gets ownership of is the trademarks for the Dapr project. So if anyone was wanting to name their child Dapr, I would think twice, because then the CNCF would basically own your child. So, yeah.
Yes, that's a very good point. And that's DAPR. I mean, you could call it another
yes, you can call it anything else, yes.
All right, well, with that point, Jeroen, why don't you talk about what's happening with the Steering and Technical Committee?
Yeah, thanks. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the Dapr Steering and Technical Committee is really separate from the CNCF effort. I know that we've been talking about them a lot in parallel, because those 2 efforts were going pretty much together for a long period of time, but they're really separate. And the Dapr Steering and Technical Committee basically has one major goal, and that's to ensure that the project is actually vendor neutral, regardless of the CNCF. So whether or not Dapr goes into any foundation, and again, we really hope that it makes it into the CNCF, the Steering and Technical Committee basically ensures that no one vendor has a majority in the Steering and Technical Committee, which basically determines the overall technical direction of the project and controls the trademarks until it goes into a foundation, and decides about things like, for example, new special interest groups and new repositories, and governs the access to the Dapr repositories, and basically decides on policies for how to add or remove maintainers and things like that. So with this Steering Technical Committee that we're seeing here, 2 members from Microsoft, 2 from Alibaba, and 1 from Intel, the Dapr project basically ensures that it is vendor neutral. And the community can be expanded up to 11 seats in the future. So there is a place for other companies and vendors to basically come in and influence the direction of the Dapr project, which is definitely extremely interesting. So I mentioned a little bit about what the Steering and Technical Committee does. Unlike most projects that have 2 committees, one for steering and one for technical, for Dapr, just to simplify things, we've decided to create one committee for both. So you will see that there are people on the committee who might be more involved with product decisions, and other people who are more involved with technical decisions, and some people who can do both. But really, the committee means to encompass everything related to the Dapr project. So things like resolving, things like disputes, if it ever comes to that, happens from the steering committee. Deciding on new APIs for the project is something that will need like the technical steering committee's decision to make sure that the project itself still adheres to the principles that it set out for when it just launched. And then, on to things like, how do community calls happen? How does the website look like? What's the outward facing message for the project that we're actually communicating via our Twitter account and things like that. So again, this really diverse leadership that the project has, in my opinion, will really make it go towards a very successful future. And I hope that many more vendors join. If there are any questions, feel free to open up issues in the community repository, which is github.com/dapper/community. Or you can try and find us on GitHub and just ask any question that you have in the general channel. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark and Yaron, for the CNCF update and Dapr Steering and Technical Committee update. Okay, with that, I think that is the final topic. So open discussion. I'm going to refer to the chat, see if we have anything. It does not look like anything. No, I'm not seeing any questions. If anyone has any, feel free to let me know if I'm wrong. Okay, so that concludes our call for today. I appreciate everyone listening in. Again, the next call will be held on November 2nd. The 19th is DapperCon. So if you do have topics that you're interested in learning more about, or even potentially speaking about during these calls, that GitHub thread in the Dapper community repo is where to go and provide that input. So with that, thank you to the presenters, and yep, we'll see you in the next one.